Love it. Okay, so cool. Um, I don't know you. I'm Sam. Hi, Sebastian. Um, who are you? What do you do?
Yeah, yeah, nice to virtually meet you, for
Yeah.
the first time. Yeah, so my name's Sebastian Munevar, and I go by different names. I mean, my name's Sebastian, but I have two little Instagram pages. One is called the Mad Mycologist,
Mm.
and the Mad Mycologist, yeah, is essentially my local mushroom extraction company here in St. Pete. And what we're trying to do is essentially just pave the way for just new, innovative ways to extract mushrooms and infuse them into sweet things that people like to eat and also feel the
Oh,
effects from a mushroom.
interesting.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
super cool. So what do you guys experiment with now? Like what's your favorite, I guess, thing that you've created?
Yeah, so I definitely I get to play with a really cool piece of equipment called the Soxhlet extractor.
Okay. What is it called? A soxla?
Soxhlet, so like Soxhlet.
Soxhlet. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and it's pretty much like it looks like a fancy bong, some people call it.
Fun.
Yeah, but it's pretty much like an extraction apparatus that uses heat, condensation, and then percolation to basically soak the mushrooms in just hot solvents like alcohol. And
Whoa.
that just pulls all the oils, through gravity down to the bottom chamber that it all collects into. Um,
That's super cool. So does then that eliminate the need for, I know like mushrooms usually have like a double extraction that makes them like the most effective. Is that true? And then does that like negate kind of like that process?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I mean, it all depends what you really want to do with it. With the mushroom and the extracts. I mean, the Soxit is great because you can run an alcohol extraction to pull all the oils. And then once you pull those oils, and you can take the biomass out, like the mushroom powder, let
Mm-hmm.
it dry off a little bit. Once it's dried off, then you can come back the next day, put it back into that same column, and then just fill up the bottom with water instead, and then have your water extract.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's super cool. So it still would need the double extraction, but it's like way easier.
Yeah, exactly. Like the way in which you do it. I mean, one, the apparatus that you're using is going to extract it better with the physics that it uses, and then yeah, you can kind of like split those two extracts in the way that you like keep them separate for a while you're extracting them, and then if you want, bring them together later.
I'm muted. That's super cool. Hang on, I'm gonna move myself because I didn't realize the neighbors were mowing still.
Where exactly are you?
So, oh, okay, cool. So right now I am in St. Louis, Missouri. But I actually travel around
Same.
quite a bit. Um, my home base is North Carolina, and
Nice.
yeah, I just go. I tell people I work for God, and I go where God says.
Hmm.
I don't. I don't ask questions.
Yeah, you just listen and you follow, and you find yourself settling in the right spot.
Yep. And like here, I'm here for at least another, I guess, 7 days. No, more than that, until like the end of the month.
Hmm.
I'll be here. And then actually it's interesting and I love that we get to connect because I already had the pull that I had to go to Florida next. And
Mm.
so we'll find out what that looks like. Hopefully we can if if us connecting is part of me going to Florida, then here we are.
I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
Right? So yeah, I maybe we should dive into why I originally even hit you up, right? So
Yeah, yeah, totally unexpected.
yeah, thanks for not thinking I'm a totally insane person. Because I definitely did just Instagram message you, and I'm like, the trees ask me
I love that.
ask
I
me to
love
reach
that.
out to you. But it worked out so beautifully. So I guess your mom maybe went through HCL
Yes, she
and then
did.
connected with Brian, who I connected with through. a mutual HCL friend. I went through HCL. Have you gone through HCL?
I have not. I have not gone through HCL.
Interesting. Okay, cool. It's a fun time, but I feel like the mushrooms teach us what that training also teaches us. So,
Mm,
very interesting. But yeah, so kind of, the web of connection got me to you. And interestingly enough, last week I was out front in this yard here in St. Louis, just like meditating with this tree. And they want us to figure out a way to filter the rivers with mushroom mycelium.
mm.
So that's kind
Yeah,
of
this is that in itself was so synchronistic when you first mentioned that to me in the message, dude.
how
Because
does
like
that
that's something.
yeah, how does that come up for you?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that's been kind of evolving and slowly pacing itself with how it comes, to manifesting. This
Mhm.
idea, in the past year and a half to 2 years, maybe. Because I live in Tampa Bay in St. Petersburg, Florida.
Okay.
Are you familiar with Tampa Bay at all?
I have been to Tampa Bay and I used to be in the hemp industry, so I have some connections with Uplift and they're all out in St. Pete.
Yeah, I know exactly who Uplift is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
I have
cool.
tried their products.
Yeah, they're good
So,
people.
yeah, so I'm in St. Pete, and about a year and a half ago, we had a summertime that was just grueling. It was super hot, and with that heat, we typically see something called red tide here in
Oh,
Tampa Bay.
yeah.
So you familiar with red tide?
I think so. Did it happen this year too?
It did. It happened more throughout
Okay.
the year too, not even just summer.
Interesting. Okay, so break it down for me a little because I'm familiar, but I don't know if I know exactly what.
Yeah, so red tide is pretty much the phrase and name that was coined for a phenomena that happens specifically starting in the summertime here in Tampa Bay, and sometimes even along the coast, of West, Florida, Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah.
And it's where we see these like large blooms of like red algae in the oceans,
Oh.
close to the beaches. And these red algae, they bloom so quickly because excess nutrients get flooded into the water from the summer
Mm,
storms and spring rains. And
interesting. So it's like, is it when you're saying excess nutrients, is it like organic stuff or is it like people are fertilizing their grass and then that's going on to it, or is it like a combo?
Yeah, you could say it's a combo, and I would say that a lot of it could easily be attributed to the excess fertilizers that we lay throughout our suburban neighborhoods, golf courses, even especially.
Mm,
I
yeah,
think they use a lot of water and spray a lot of those fertilizers to keep the grass green, for that industry.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, there's this one summer where red tide had gotten so bad that they were scooping essentially millions of pounds of dead fish right out of the bay, even at Vinoy Park in downtown St. Pete.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Because
like
is
grouper.
the algae, how is it killing the fish?
Yeah, so the algae is a specific strain of red algae called Corellia brevis, I believe. And the Corellia brevis algae essentially blooms from the excess nutrients, and they pretty much soak up all the oxygen that's in the water.
Oh, so they can't breathe.
Yeah, so it becomes like a dead
Hey.
zone. And not only do they soak up the oxygen, but they release a lot of toxins too. And
Okay.
like one in the water becomes toxic, but they also release like toxic gases in the air to where like you'll be laying at the beach and you'll be like coughing like every couple minutes because like
Whoa.
there's this like thing in the air from the red algae blooms and red tide that like it like itches the back of your throat like constantly.
That's so interesting. So like spores or something, some kind
Some
of something. Yeah.
Yeah, they say it's toxins, and it just irritates the respiratory system, and some people are more sensitive than others.
Yeah.
And I know that was around the time that COVID was still happening, that a lot of people were feeling issues in here, and that just kind of exacerbated it, But
Yeah.
essentially, it's not fun because you can't breathe at the beach and you can't swim. There's dead
Yeah.
fish, so you smell that
Oh,
everywhere.
that's awful.
Yeah, and we can enjoy the paradise
Oh,
that is the reason why we love St. Peter, Tampa Bay. So
right.
And
So then that inspired you to start seeking like kind of, I guess, ideas of how to correct that?
yeah, so I just started thinking, I was like, you know what, like if runoff is the issue, there's got to be some way that we can like mitigate this runoff, like there's got to
Mm,
be one. I mean, we're just obviously, I think, using too much of it unnecessarily, fertilizers and all these things, when
yeah,
there's certainly like maybe more natural alternatives. And then ultimately, I
dead
think,
things.
yeah.
That's what the
And I think
mushrooms are trying to teach us, but we'll
exactly,
learn.
I think they're very symbolic of utilizing all your resources and being a closed loop system that doesn't waste anything,
Mm.
and so yeah, I just started looking, researching, and I remember at the time, and I still do, I had this book called Mycelium Running.
Mm.
Are you familiar with this book?
I'm not, but it sounds exciting.
It is. It's probably the mushroom Bible for
Okay,
how they can save the world in many ways.
that's so fun.
Um, and it was written by Paul Stamets,
Of course.
the wizard himself, of
We
course.
love. We're big Paul Stamets fans.
So he wrote this book, and I just remember it was actually one that my friend gave me in college. My friend Tony, he was a big mushroom guy. He was the mushroom guy at my college before I was the mushroom guy, quote unquote. And then so now there were two mushroom guys in college, and he let me borrow it. And then we got kicked off campus because COVID quarantines and stuff like
Okay.
that. So I still had his book with me, and I was at one house, in quarantine, quote unquote, and then he was over back in Pennsylvania. So I was like, dude,
Interesting.
like I still got your book, man. I was like, I was like, I hope it's okay, Tony, but I highlighted a bunch of info with a highlight.
I guess we'll take a little couple minute intermission. Okay, cool. So he was in Pennsylvania and you have his book.
And I just mindlessly, just in my nerding out, geeking out, looking at info, I just took a highlighter and I just start highlighting all this dope info in the book.
Okay.
And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, this is not my book. I can't be just highlighting away in here. So that's what I messaged him. I'm like, hey, dude, like I still have your book. I can ship it to you, but like I just hope you know that like I accidentally highlighted a bunch of really good info in here. And I was like, if anything, dude, like I can just buy you a new book and send you one fresh, dude. And he's like, oh, dude, like that's all right, man. I appreciate getting me a new book. Like that sounds great. You can do that. So send him a new book. Fulfilled my promise in that, right?
free
And
free of the inspiration though. He really probably got the worst end of the deal.
yeah. So dude, it was too funny. And so then I had this book from him, thankfully. And I just started going through it, and I noticed that in the index or the glossary, that there was a chapter on mycofiltration.
Mm.
I was like, interesting. I'm like, that sounds like that's in the realm of what I'm trying to find as a solution here for red
Mhm.
tide and runoff. So that's when I went in the book, and as I'm going through the mycofiltration, I found a story,
Okay.
and it was a story about Paul Stamets actually,
Yeah.
and yeah, and his story was probably like the perfect encapsulation of the potential that
Okay.
mushrooms have. And it was a story about when he bought a piece of land in the Skookum Inlet in Washington. And on this inlet, there's a big like shellfish industry through that river and
Okay.
inlet. And his land's situated right on top of that river where the shellfish industry is. And it's kind of his land is kind of like a downslope as it
Oh,
goes down to the river. And on his land, that's the downslope, he also had a farm. And he had like 6 cows, pigs, chickens. And when you have all those animals, what else do you have too?
right. You have all their poop.
All their poop. It's got to go somewhere.
Yeah.
So when you got a downslope, gravity takes it where it goes,
Yeah.
and he had all this like fecal runoff that was going down his land and into the Skookum Inlet, so much that after he moved in, the local sheriff showed up on his property and said, hey, Paul, like, we did some readings and testing on your land, and we found that your fecal coliform levels are way too high.
Oh.
Like this is going to seriously affect like the shellfish industry and your neighbors long term if we don't get this fixed. So we're going to give you pretty much an ultimatum right now to where we're going to give you 2 years to install a septic tank system to collect all this, manure and waste, to offset what you're putting into the Skookum Inlet. So that was pretty much the choice they gave him.
Hmm.
So knowing Paul, himself,
Right. I'm
he
like already excited. I'm like, okay, so what was the solution?
so he already started thinking. He's like, well, like, there's mushrooms grow on poop, and they do their own thing with cleaning up waste. So maybe there's something I can incorporate them in here. So he started to look at his land at the downslope, and I think as his land downsloped, it had these like divots that would like level out and kind of get like low in and then keep going before the next downslope.
Yeah. So he had
So
like
he
little retainer ponds.
almost like, yeah, retainer ponds that would collect before falling down the next slope. And
Yeah.
he came up with the idea that, what, like, what if I just set up like a mycelium mulch bed, like lined across, these divots, let's say 100 feet long, how long I can make it on my property. And what if the waste just passes through that mycelium matrix and the mycelium just pull out what they need to eat? To them, it's nutrients, to them, it's food.
Hmm.
And then it keeps passing through. And then he had another, like almost like a secondary filter of mycelium patch at the bottom that he installed as well.
So
And
do we know, did he share what kind of mycelium he was using?
yeah, so he was using the King Stropharia mushroom.
I
It's
don't
like
think
it's
I
also
know
called
that
the
mushroom.
garden giant. Yeah, the garden giant. It's massive. They can grow like, just huge, hence
Whoa.
their name.
Yeah,
And they
king.
almost got like a red burgundy kind of color on the cap too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they're edible. They're also edible.
That's cool. I feel like I have seen them for sale usually in like more not American grocery stores.
Yeah, it's definitely not a common mushroom, that's for
Yeah.
sure. Like it's one of those rare, novel kind of species that you might find your low-key grower who's like, "Hey, I got this going. Like, dude, I've seen that." Like,
So
and like,
fun.
so he used that mushroom. I think he used another species. I can't remember, but I think like the main star in the success of this was the King Stropharia, um,
Okay.
the mushroom. And
It got retested.
so yeah, they came back a year later, they retested it, and they found that his fecal coliform levels had dropped significantly low, even below than what they were requiring him
Whoa.
it to be at. And they were like, how is this even? They were like, did you install a septic tank? And he's like, no, I didn't. And they're like, wow, well, like if you can keep these levels at this amount, then you're good. We don't need to install it, because
Yeah.
he was not about to install that, like
Right,
all that
no.
money.
He had a different plan.
Different plan, nature's plan, and not a man-made, synthetic thousands of dollars tank that needs to be emptied every once in a while.
Yeah.
You know,
And like septic tanks are weird, but yeah. Good on
yeah,
him.
exactly. So after I saw that story, I was like, that is it. Like that is the story that can like serve as the foundation as proof, that
Hmm.
a plan like this can work for fecal coliform, poop waste, then it must be the same for at least things like pesticides, fertilizers, or any other toxic, chemicals that
Yeah.
are leaching from the cities and into our waterways. So yeah, after that, I started like putting together a presentation because I was like, I'm gonna come to the city about this. I'm gonna approach, Tampa Bay Wildlife, Fish and Wildlife, the nonprofit here, and made a presentation. Reached out to Florida Fish and Wildlife, and they were kind of like, I was kind of like, I thought they were gonna be a little more cooperative,
Okay.
but it almost seemed like they were like, I don't know. I don't know if it was bureaucracy, gatekeeping or whatever you want to call it, but like they were making it really hard to want to get on a call with me, to talk
Interesting.
about this idea.
Yeah.
And they just kept saying, "Hey, just send us white papers, send us any proof, that this is possible, you know." And I was like, "All right, great. Like I can definitely share that with you. How about we hop on a Zoom call and we can just talk about this idea and I can share some of these papers with you." And didn't get back to me. Sent up another follow-up email a week later. They still didn't get back to me. Sent another email 2 weeks later. They still didn't get back to me. So I kind of just got ghosted by Florida Fish and Wildlife a little bit. Um, and was kind of a little like, I guess, disappointed, like, but like also kind of I got it, like I understood why, this was happening. I was like, in my mind, I'm like, all right, well, I just presented a solution to like a really big issue in Tampa Bay that's like costing the economy, and fishing industry is probably millions.
Yeah.
Um, and it's yeah, and it's using like a cheap, low cost method, with nature, in
Yeah.
plan. So like how I would think that they would be like on top of it, like, yeah, let's get a call right now. Let's talk
Well,
about this.
and as you were saying that, so right, like mushrooms are very like, I'm gonna take it to a weird place real quick.
Yes, please.
Mushrooms are super like high vibe, whatever. And I feel like government systems like don't, they're like, what's the bottom line for the dollar? And you're
Hmm.
presenting a solution that, like, what is their incentive, I guess? But as you were talking, you said the fishing industry. I'm like, oh, that might be someone to approach then
True.
because they're having the problem. Tampa Fish and
Exactly.
Wildlife is not having the problem because people are still buying their licenses. They're still going outside, like,
Yeah, definitely. I think it'd be good to leverage the right group of people, that
mhm,
are being affected, in a way that, is going to help out, and create a solution for them. And then
right.
they can kind of publicly state like, hey, we just found out that like we can use mushrooms to like help our industry, like, and they kind of shake the tree of the brand or system of
Yeah.
like, guys, like there's something over here. But yeah, I like what you said about the government kind of being at this certain kind of like
Yeah.
vibration,
Well,
almost.
and I think what we're doing here, even just us like having a conversation about mushrooms cleaning the water, is like it's a whole new paradigm of like solutions to problems that kind of like that piece of the world, like they're not worried about the solutions.
Hmm.
They're worried about like fast money. And it's like, okay, well, I want to live on this planet for a long time.
Hmm.
So
Definitely, definitely.
yeah.
And it just felt like this odd like in group out group kind of like
Yeah.
dynamic, like you're not part of our organization, we don't know what credentials you have, we don't care if you have all the passion in the world that you can fill in this one email.
Yeah.
But we want to see more than that, to accept you,
Yeah.
or to
Yeah.
take you seriously at least, and it's like, wow, like just, I mean, I guess, so I get it, but so that's why I'm like, I took a stop for a while, and I had other
Yeah.
life things, other projects that I was putting energy into, and I was like, all right, I can't do everything at once. I've already spread
Right.
myself thin before, let me be mindful and take some smaller steps and kind of regroup and figure out, who I can connect with.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I
That makes sense. So, okay, so you had the proposal, you pitched it to them. Did you finish the presentation?
that's the thing. I didn't even get to presentation part.
I know not
Uh,
with them, but you
oh,
said
you
they
mean
were
like
working
making
on
it
it. Yeah,
itself?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's really close to being done.
Okay, but no, I feel you. When there's not good feedback, it's like, well, I'm just gonna put this down for a minute.
Yeah, and I've
Yeah.
mapped out some other new plans. Like the presentation is a good kind of like what it is in itself, a presentation for a group of
Yeah.
people. And since then, I kind of revived this kind of project in the last 6 months, I would say.
Okay.
And I've been kind of taking it in a different direction to like possibly starting some small scale studies with microfiltration
Okay.
to where almost like if people want to see proof, of the
Yeah.
efficacy, if it can be done at this small scale successfully, maybe we can scale it up to, the suburban city scale.
Mhm.
And I've been thinking about ways to create just like small contained mycelium based filters,
Mhm.
um, like columns
Like a
and like
Brita
engineering.
filter, but of mushrooms.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Like an organic mushroom Brita filter,
Yeah.
and create multiple study groups and have different like types of dirty water, with at least the fertilizers and other things that we can test and know is in the water in our area. and then just run it through all those matrices, like the different kinds, and then just test the water as it gets down to the bottom of the
Yeah.
matrix, and then see like, all right, well, what's the result? How much did the mycelium pull out versus, let's say, the control group, that didn't have any mycelium in it and was just pure mulch and sand and all these other, organic compounds that are
Yeah, so
not
that was
necessarily.
gonna be one of my next questions. You said mulch and sand. What kind of substrate do you feel would be like the best for that?
Yeah, so I'm thinking like making it into like, this is why I want to have multiple study groups.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I would love to
Test them
see
out.
how different types of like substrate matrices would affect how the water kind of like falls down from one level to the next,
Mm-hmm.
to where it to where it lets the water fall down easily enough to get through, but not but
But
slow enough
slow enough. Yeah.
to take
Yeah.
its time and let the mycelium pull everything out. Yes, exactly.
Yes. I love that.
so
Cool.
so I'm thinking of things like, a mix of just pure mulch,
Okay. What kind of
and then
you're saying mulch? Like tree mulch? Is there a specific tree? Is there a specific
yeah.
like
So I'm thinking like hardwood mulch, essentially,
okay.
maybe like oak. I know we have a
Okay.
lot of oak mulch that they dump in truckloads in this area.
Interesting. Okay.
So at least a hardwood tree, possibly oak, and make sure that it's completely untreated, at least as
Yeah,
relatively organic
as much as it can be.
as we can get, yeah, for the study. And yeah, so mulch, and then another one that could have like the the mushrooms grown on sawdust first, and then the sawdust sprinkled into the mulch to then
Mm-hmm.
grow throughout there, or maybe a mix of like mulch, straw, and sawdust, and either mix it all throughout homogeneously or have just stratified different layers. Um, yeah, I mean, and have it pass through those different types of matrices. Um,
That would be cool. Last night I was thinking about it. And obviously you do way more like legit research. I just think about things. But I remembered one time I bought this like hemp fiber cat litter. It wasn't,
hmm.
I didn't use it for cat litter. I just used it for mulching purposes.
Oh, okay,
But it
okay.
was like just already kind of shredded like hemp fiber. And I don't know, I like personally know that mushrooms and hemp are like
Yeah,
besties.
yes,
They they love each other.
I
So,
have heard about that.
oh no, okay, we have 10 minutes. Cool.
10 minutes on it.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Um, but yeah, just so I love that. I love that you've thought of all of it, it seems like. So, do you have any traction? Do you have any leads? Do you have any like what do we need? How do we make this
Yeah,
happen?
that's a good question. So I've been kind of like drawing out, the designs of like the different columns and the
Yeah.
different combos I want to use of substrates. And like right now, I've been kind of pondering. I'm like, all right, maybe I just need to find the right team of people, I mean, at least me and the mycology aspect of like designing it and figuring out species to work with, and then someone who's in like water quality testing and
Okay.
has done a lot of water quality testing, whether it's for a variety of chemicals, pesticides, fertilize, heavy
Yeah.
metals. I mean, heavy metals especially too. um
Yeah.
and yeah, like someone in each of those industries, and yeah, at least a team of the right people for those different parts of the study that we want to do. I mean, I'm not too well versed on how to structure a study properly to keep in keep in mind all the factors, variables, confounding variables. So it'd be nice to have someone who's done studies before to like
Okay.
structure the study,
Yeah.
someone that can do the purely just the water testing of our results after it passes the matrix, and then me and someone else who's working on the biology, engineering, mycology aspect of
Yeah.
like choosing mushrooms, creating their matrix, um, and then yeah, just like doing the study and finding a way to fund that, at least a small scale study,
Yeah.
um, to make that happen. So I've like thought about like my college I graduated from at Eckerd, which is here in St. Pete, and getting in touch with that lab, or USF St. Pete, because I know Eckerd doesn't have a whole lot of testing, I guess you could say, equipment and technology. So yeah, and I know we got like Tampa Bay Waterkeeper. They test the waters for algae.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm just being very careful of who is the right person, rather than the one that kind of seems like it, but isn't.
Right.
That someone that wants to explore this has the time to explore it, and understands like, what their role would be,
Okay.
and yeah, and would like to see it through, and yeah, and I mean finding at least identifying where we find this dirty water, this runoff, or at least someone who has a problem, like you said,
Yeah,
and
well,
then
I I'm like, honestly, we all have the problem, right? Like all of the
yeah,
water is gross. And
true.
like more things keep happening. Like for me, I sort of got like the spark of this idea um when the train started derailing, right? And there's like
Mhm.
I read somewhere where someone said that oyster mushroom mycelium was able to like eat that the one that was in Ohio, it was like dioxin or something.
Vinyl chloride or something like
Yeah.
that.
But
Yeah.
it like I think it switches once it gets into like they burned it and then it changed into like a different molecule
I see.
and then that went into the water and the oyster mushroom mycelium. And I say I read this, the way my brain works, I could have read it, it could have been a TikTok, I could have dreamed it. I really somehow it came to me
Yeah, yeah.
that the oyster mushroom mycelium, there was a possibility that it could eat that toxin specifically.
Hmm.
So, I mean, we all have the problem, right? It's like it's not just the red algae, it's everyone. It's, heavy metals, it's fertilizers,
I mean,
animal
Flint,
fill,
Michigan, they were like
everything.
a
Yeah.
big one for a while that were like,
They have pretty bad water. I know I typically live in North Carolina and the water down there, DuPont is upstream from
mm,
them. And they put like we have a chemical called Gen X that's been in our water for there's like a half true documentary about it on Netflix. I can't remember what it's called. But yeah, they basically have been putting that into the Cape Fear River since the 70s, and they didn't tell anyone until like 2015.
interesting. What is this
Yeah.
Gen X? What is that even from?
So Gen X is a byproduct of the Teflon
Mm,
process, like creating Teflon for like the pots and pans.
yeah.
And it's some weird, like I said, just like a byproduct chemical, and then they just dump it, and then it came out that it causes liver cancer and all kinds of just weirdness. And they say, now that it's like safe or whatever, but it's the same company that owns it still.
Yeah.
So
I don't think anything changed, just a new face.
new
But
face, couple new ads. They were like, we're your neighbors that care. It's like, bestie, you poisoned us.
yeah, it's straight up greenwashing at its finest, even
Yeah.
not even, but like, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, okay, so cool. I love that. I think um I mean, me posting this podcast, right, will then this conversation, if you will, podcast, I feel like that's the point of this conversational podcast is to now we know who we need, right? Like you listed off like people, so hopefully we'll just call them to us. The power of the mushrooms and the trees.
Mycelium network finding.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, and that's kind of I feel like one of my personal purposes and missions on this planet is to act on behalf of the mycelium and to act as a piece of the human mycelium, right? So like let's just connect stuff and see what we can create because yeah, like it's important. We need it, you know?
Truly, I think we're at this kind of forefront of a new age of embodying more of like a divine custodian of our planet, and I think mushrooms have already been doing that and serving that function for so long, and I think yeah, they're here to kind of mirror us in that way to remind us like that's essentially what we can embody and utilize and follow, after.
Yeah.
um because yeah, it's really up to us how we choose to live and impact our environment. And I think there's so much potential. I like to call myself a realistic optimist. And in a way, I'm realistic, but like I think there's always a way, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah,
And
I kind of align with that. I'm like, I'm not really very realistic. I'm like, dream the stars and then we're gonna work backwards to find the stairs to get there.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I think
And
it starts with a big dream, and then
yeah.
the realistic, ground up way to reach that, or vice versa,
Yeah.
however way like it can happen. We just, if we know it can happen, if we can conceive the idea, there is a way there,
Yeah.
you know.
We
And
wouldn't think it if it couldn't be.
exactly, it's just about finding, and yeah.
Yeah, it's just connecting the pieces. It's so interesting as you were saying that, like kind of going back on my visual of like shoot for the stars and then we'll build it there. It really more it like sort of like it just comes like we don't have to build, I don't think. We just connect and it all will yeah, I know that was a weird tangent, but
As long as we connect, it can happen,
yeah.
like it enables this reality by just connecting,
Mhm.
and I agree, it's not this like build, 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 strong, like driven masculine. It's like if it comes together, it can happen. As long as both your hearts are desiring it, it'll happen.
Yep.
And we don't know how, but it will.
It will. It will.
In some way.
Yeah, it will. Okay, well, we're about to run out of time.
Yes.
Where can the people find you?
So people can find me at the Mad Mycologist altogether, THEMAD Mycologists
I'll
plural, and
also
then
have you email it to me so that way it's in the show notes.
definitely can put that in the show notes. And you can find my other page, which is Myco_mission, MYCO_mission. And that's kind of like my general mushroom education platform that
Love it.
has a lot of cool little fun projects and photography. So yeah.
Amazing. Okay, cool. Do you have any like final inspirational words or anything to share with us? It's okay if you don't. That was on the spot.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the
Y-
show.
yeah, no, that I mean, we dropped a lot of great nuggets here, just listen and follow. And once you
Yeah,
grasp
and
that
reach
feeling,
out. I'll